Bolaram, Baljate Vatur Narvode. Welcome to our podcast. I think we're all the way up to 16 now. Holy crap, we're definitely getting up there in numbers. I have been looking at the analytics. A lot of y'all have been watching, especially, or listening and watching. The intro to language is one of our most listened to podcasts. It's over 100 listens on that one. So just want to say thank you for everybody and welcome. Let's get started. We've got Grant Kincaid here. Most of the time he's over there on the Facebook group. He's part of our Armorers Guild. And with that, our topic today is armor. And he's been getting a lot of questions from everybody, so we've got him in here to help us out and describe what armor we should be wearing, where we can go about getting it, all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, Grant.
Hello, thanks for having me. A big thing that I see is that, and get questioned on is, people have an item that they really have a lot of emotional attachment to, like, let's say, for instance, a watch. I linked a watch not too long ago that I thought was pretty interesting, and the first question is, does this count as armor? Not really. It's going to keep you on time, as I mentioned in that post. But in my research of armor, it's been very interesting to learn what our ancient societies have considered armor, from wood, literally wood, tied to your body, and laminates of cloth, using sinew and cotton, or I can't remember the other ancient names for some of the cloth, but they would literally laminate that with sinew and almost like glue, an ancient glue and pine tar and stuff like that, and they would protect their vulnerable parts of their bodies, because that ultimately is what we're trying to achieve with armor. It's not just it's not a fashion accessory. It doesn't need to be pretty. It needs to function, but it needs to be something that can actually defend. So, a watch is not going to cut it. I mean, even if it's one of those giant watches that a lot of the people these days find fashionable, it's almost like having a shield on your arm, but it's still not technically armor. Because the faith armors your soul. That's your spiritual armor. That's what gives you the impetus to go out into the world and to live the life of a protector and a guide, essentially. I mean, we are trying to bring people back to the mindset that you are in control of your life, and the world is not in control of you. You need to control your world. And armor is one of the tools that gives us the ability to survive that. As you all know, if you watch the news and follow any kind of political party, you know that one side is for one thing and one side is for the other. But ultimately, in the middle, what you have is a society that is confused and very violent in a lot of areas, and arms and armor and weaponry and the knowledge to use these things is very paramount if you want to be a protector. You can't just say, I'm a protector, and walk out the door and expect to be able to do anything. You have to actually train. You have to pick your tools correctly and keep some mental situational awareness. And armor is just one small facet of that, but it is a very important one. If you're cut in any of your major arteries, are you going to be able to function, or are you going to focus on that? I mean, I think we all know you're going to try to stop that bleeding and get someplace that you can correct the issue. But if you're armored correctly, then that then becomes something that you don't have to worry as much about. You can then focus on the task at hand. And so when I see people bring me these questions about, can I use this or this as armor? The watch is a good example. I always refer back to them, or ask them a question. Do you feel safe wearing that? If you were in some form of conflict, because protectors, unfortunately, we do need to wade into conflict at times to bring people and loved ones that are not able to do it themselves, bring them out of that conflict. So if you don't feel comfortable with a piece of kit that you have, and literally by comfortable, not just physically, is it comfortable on you when you're wearing it? Because that's also a component. But if you don't feel comfortable knowing that that is going to protect you, then that's not armor. you can go and buy all the neat, pretty cosplay armor, or you can literally get, the things that you see. There's quite a few internet YouTube people out there that make armor out of like deck plating, the little dymo plates, stuff like that. Yes, that'll stop a knife. No, it's not going to be bulletproof. That in this day and age, I'm not aware of a substance or material that would be light enough to fully armor our bodies as Beskar would in the fictional universe. If anyone finds it, let me know. I'll learn about how to work on it and make a full suit for whoever has the money, unfortunately, because that's the world we live in. But it is very difficult to bulletproof your body. The best you're going to really be able to do is blunt force trauma, because that hurts and that will take you out of a fight. A knife, but bullets, really, you want to protect your pumps, your heart, your lungs. So if you can afford a good quality set of, I prefer metal, because that's metal plates, because that's what makes me feel the most warm and fuzzy, because they're not going to wear out. Ceramics degrade over time. I think some of the newer, lighter weight plastics, they have a shelf life, whereas steel really doesn't have a shelf life. They tell you it has a shelf life, like if you're not taking care of it and you let it rust and you let that spall coating become damaged, then it's not optimal at that point as far as full protection. But everything to do with armor is a compromise. So that is kind of the first place you want to start with your armor. Does it make me feel comfortable? Is it physically comfortable? Because if those two questions are no, then it doesn't matter if it is Beskar. You're not going to wear it. It's not going to do its job if it's sitting in the desk drawer at home. So comfort is paramount when it comes to armor. I'm actually, because of all the testing I've been doing with the gauntlet, I developed that, and hammering. I developed tendonitis in my right arm because
Ooh.
I figured I would personally rather put my body through the abuse and create something that is comfortable for me and that won't hurt y'all, because by the time I finish making something and it gets out to you guys, it needs to function, and that's the philosophy that drives what I do. That I've got a slew of people that I'm going to be sending armor to for testing, because they have volunteered to do the same thing, to put their bodies, not so much at risk. I'm not telling them to run into the fray or anything, but um, one of my guys is a leatherneck, and he is hard. They eat crayons, and they'll destroy the toughest things you could find. Um, I would even worry about putting Beskar on a Marine. But he tests my stuff and he puts it through the ringer, and it has thankfully survived, and he's been able to maintain it, because that is also a function of what we do. We, as protectors, we have to make sure our kit is clean. You go to the range. When you're done at the range, you come home, you clean your weapon. Armor is no different. If it gets wet, it needs to be oiled. If the leather gets wet, it needs to be dried out and oiled. There's always a level of maintenance that we have to do, not just with our kit, but with ourselves. We can't carry the armor because we're too weak. Again, it's not armor. It's just a hindrance at that point. Um, so my philosophy is that the armor is the physical thing that we wear in the world. Obviously the armored cup is an icon, and it is a small piece of armor. You can use it as a blunt impact tool. You can use it, I boxed and have done Krav Maga and some other various forms of martial arts, and one of the biggest things is protecting your head. You get your bell rung, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So usually that involves your hands, bringing your arms up, and so the thought to me was that it could be multifaceted, and your armor should be multifaceted. It shouldn't just be one thing. My plate carrier also carries some of my backup admin reloads and some medical, make holes, plug holes. So you want to be able to feel comfortable, be comfortable, but also multi-purpose. If you have something that only does one thing, it can limit you. Now, I'm not saying you should try to overload your plate carrier or anything by that stretch. You look at spec ops guys, and they're running slick carriers and maybe 2 or 3 magazines, a radio pouch, and a boo kit. Those are the guys that are tip of the spear. Those are the guys that are doing the stuff every day. So I look at a lot of that, but I also look back and I see. I mean, I'm looking at my bookshelf right now, and I can count 15, 16 books on just arms and armor from the medieval and beyond, and some more modern stuff, Civil War stuff, and you see how little these warriors had and how much they were able to accomplish with just the little bit of armor, the little bit of kit that they had. So having your body completely laden down with armor is not important. Protecting your wrists, I think, is very important because those are very delicate areas. Obviously, you don't want to get shot in the nuts either, but that's a hard place to armor because you need to be mobile. But it's back to the point of what constitutes armor. It needs to be something that, at the bare minimum, a knife cannot penetrate. Uh, Deflecting it is awesome. You don't want it to catch. You never want your armor to snag a weapon because then you become part of that aggressor and you have to fight. Not only do you at that point have to fight the fight, you then have to fight to get free of that person and their weapon. So it needs to be something. If you're looking at online armor that is not for me, and I fully encourage you to go look at some of the more established armorers out there. They make really great kit. When you're looking at armor, you want to make sure it's not something that is um, flashy, like the Witch King armor that I've seen that looks really cool, but in an actual combat situation, that's going to catch everything from brush and debris, so you're not going to be able to move silent. If that is your whole deal, and most time when you're on a recon mission, you're not really wearing armor. But if you are, it needs to be something that's not going to catch the bushes and give away your position. But any kind of fight that involves close quarters with an axe, knife, or anything, you do not want your armor to catch weapons. That's not what armor is about. Armor is about deflecting so that you can move and get away from that threat or get behind that threat and incapacitate it and stop that threat, because ultimately that's what's going to protect you the most, is being able to stop the aggressor, stop the threat to either yourself or others. So your armor needs to be, again, it doesn't need to be pretty. Obviously, we want to paint it up and make it look cool, but it does not need to have spikes. That's a no-go. Um, you want to make sure that it's secure on your body where you place it. That's a big thing with what I'm trying to develop, is something, not just the armor itself, but a whole system that keeps it in place and allowing for more comfort. Because if you look at the techs in the medieval armor, they didn't just slap bare metal to their skin. They had furs or hide between them and the armor, because that stuff gets hot in the sun. If you take a blow to that and it's directly up against your body, it can still transfer force into your arm or your chest or your shoulder or head. So I mean, even modern armor, you have I call them trauma tampons. But
I mean, you're not wrong.
yeah, I mean that's what they're there for. They're there to keep you safe, and it's a soft piece of kit that that blunt force impact is still going to be a thing even once you have those things, but it mitigates that. So it's important to take all of this into account, because armor is more than just the metal on your body. It's the padding you have, the training you have. Because even those little armored cuffs, the first time I was wearing those out and about, I had one on each wrist, and I carry in the appendix. I feel that my level of training and years of using firearms has made it to where I feel more comfortable with that position. I used to carry on the 3 and 4 o'clock, or I had a shoulder holster for a while because of my Miami Vice days as a kid. I always wanted to try one out, and it just didn't fit me. I'm not super tall, and I'm a little narrower of a gentleman, so it printed a lot more than I liked, even under a big jacket. So I had to find other ways to carry, and the appendix for me works. So I've developed my armored cuffs, and what I'm also developing the bigger armor pieces for is not just obviously as an item of faith, but when I wear something on my offhand wrist, I can use that as an impact tool. So I mean, I'm always thinking, what can I do with this armor? What can't I do with this armor? And I would challenge all of you to do that with every bit of your kit, from armor to weapons to knives. I mean, if you have two hands, but you shouldn't be carrying 30 different knives. I mean, there's really no point to it. I carry three. I have one on my back right hip that I can get to, that is my, somewhat bigger. It's my self-defense knife, and then I have two pocket knives. One's an admin knife, and another is a fast-opening self-defense knife. But they all have a purpose. They're all there for a reason. It's because I've carried multiple things, and I've thought about these things and what they're going to do and how I can get to them. Because a lot of times, especially if it's a self-defense scenario, you're going to be surprised. You're already going to be on the back foot when these things happen, and having proper fitting armor and armor in places that you feel is important, as well as your tip where you can get to it with either hand or have one on the left, one on the right. Those are all things that you need to consider. So when we talk about armor, it leads into all these other broad questions of am I wearing it to be cool? Am I wearing it for a reason? You have to, just like with anything, like you have to self-assess. You have to ask yourself the hard questions. Why am I doing this? What is benefiting me from me having this on? So when it comes to armor, that's super important, because if you're just picking stuff just to show and not have any go behind it, it's really not protecting you. So looking at all the stuff that I see out on the market, I've seen, and if necessary, I'll put a list of people who I would purchase from. But I think with just the simple little advice of, is it functional or is it fancy? Is it there for show or is it there to actually, do a job? So if you're looking outside of the faith for armor, look for things that are being used in the modern sport of medieval combat. That is a good guide. If it's approved for that, I would put my rubber stamp on it in a heartbeat. You wouldn't even need to ask me, because that's the stuff that I look at. That's what I'm taking some modern inspiration from, as well as the past, because our bodies are different than they were back then. So the shapes of armor from antiquity are not going to be the same as now. We're a lot better fed than they were back then. We actually target and do exercises. They did a lot of training, but it was always martial training for a purpose, learning how to use a lance, ride a horse. So they got fit and strong doing the things they actually did, whereas we have the luxury of taking time out of our day, because we're not working the fields or hunting for our food, to actually target our bodies and our minds and make ourselves better. We live in a golden age as far as that kind of stuff goes. And unfortunately, it is a more dangerous time, with the way things are going in our world, not just at home, but all over the world. So we could just easily get back to those days if shit truly hits the fan. Um, so these are things that we have the time to deal with now. We might as well do it, because we don't know what the future holds. So I mean, that's kind of, in a nutshell, because I could talk. Those that know me truly know I have diarrhea of the mouth, and I could go on for hours and hours. Um, Give me a cup of coffee and some food, and I could sit there all day. But it really ultimately boils down to is, what do you need? What is it that you want to armor? Are you really concerned about getting kicked in the nuts? Because there's people in your area that kick you in the nuts. Well, then armor your nuts. If you live in an area where there's a high crime rate and you do not want to look like uh, Billy Badass, the superhero, because you're going to get targeted first. Because there's two people criminals will target. They're going to target the people that are weak and that are criminals, easy prey. Or if you're open carrying, or you have all these gun shirts on, and you're wearing, your truck has stickers, Nolan Lebe or whatever the heck, and come and take it. They're gonna, if they see you as an easy, pretty much a loot vending machine, they're gonna come and take your stuff. So I would advise to have armor that is close fitting and comfortable, that you can wear under other clothing, because as much as it would be nice to be able to walk around and advertise, hey, I'm someone you can come to and when you need help, you also advertise to people that would take that stuff and use it for nefarious purposes. So I'm a very big proponent for concealed carry, being gray man as much as you can, because it's not. I know we compare ourselves a lot to the fictional universe of Star Wars when it comes to the armor and things like that, but we don't live in that society. We have a much different, we live in a society where people are looking and are judging constantly. Seems like, Mandalorians walking around in a suit of armor, and you're like, oh, cool, Mandalorian. And they just don't give a crap. But you can see in that very first episode, he walks into the canteen and he's minding his own business, and some wannabe hoodlums decide that they want his armor, because he makes himself a target. The armor later on says, now here you have all this awesome Beskar armor. People are gonna be jealous of you. Well, we can extrapolate that to our real society and our real world, that people do think like that. That is not outside the bounds of reality by any stretch. People are gonna see the things you have and either be jealous and want to take it, or they're going to be jealous and talk smack about you, which none of that matters. Other people's opinions quite literally don't matter. Um, but we can see that in our modern society that, most of us are probably old enough to remember when kids were getting the shit kicked out of them when they're taking their Air Jordans, right? So we have to, in everything, not just armor, we have to kind of take into consideration of how overt do I want to be. And some would argue, that as Mandalorians, we should just be overt and not worry about any of that. And I agree with that to an extent. If you are trained and capable, and you're a, bullet chewing motherfucker, and you can dispense justice and pain without any hesitation, and you know that you're going to win, awesome, do that. I feel that I can overcome most things, but that's because I fly under the radar. I'm not going to put myself out there where they're wearing armor or weapons and make myself a target because, unfortunately, once you're the target, again, you're on that back foot and you have to really honestly assess yourself. Just because you're wearing the armor, carrying the firearms, if you have no training with any of that stuff and you haven't rucked a mile with your plate carrier, or like I try to wear it at least once a week on a walk if I can. It's kind of hard sometimes because I get the funny stares, but I'm not wearing magazines on or anything. It's totally slick. And it's becoming more common practice to see people out there wearing weighted plate carriers, which is nice, so that kind of helps. I'm not getting the cops calling on me or anything.
Always good to know. So at the same time, and don't mean to cut you off, because we've got plenty of time to talk. Let's try to go into some specifics of what armor we're looking to get. So, like me personally, I wear a full van brace that I got from Iron Bear. I can't remember his real name at the moment. I know you know who I'm talking about. From the Facebook group.
Mm-hmm. It's the one with the leather ones?
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as it's properly made, which he buys the correct thickness of leather, and he's very skilled in what he does, even though sometimes he doesn't think so. I see his work and I'm super impressed by it.
Oh, I love my van brace. It's amazing.
And he made my wallet. Yeah. And knowing you, your wallet needs to be tough. So yeah, the leather armor is great for slashing and things like that. When if you're flying a lot, that's great armor to have on you. It's not just a symbol of your faith and devotion to what we believe. It's also going to allow you to be able to wear it on an airplane without setting off metal detectors and getting your prison wallet searched. So it is a good choice for, because just like anything else, just like you have pistol rated armor and you have rifle rated armor, that would be more slashing rated.
Yeah.
It'll take one or two good cuts from, if you're going up against someone with a meat cleaver, you might as well kiss that armor goodbye if you put it up, because it's going to go right through that leather. But
yeah, all it is skin, just like what I've cut underneath it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you wear something like that with cloth, like I was surprised. I've always, ever since I was a little boy, I've always made the toys, and we weren't exactly poor, but we weren't exactly wealthy either, but I always made my own toys, and one of those things was I would layer cardboard armor with wood glue, and then I'd finish it off with duct tape, and we would go beat the living crap out of ourselves with broom handles and wooden sticks and stuff like that, and it mitigated the damage we would get. Was it truly armor? Not by any stretch of the imagination, but once I started looking into the history, it literally, that could have been considered armor back in antiquity, because as long as it provided a level of protection above and beyond skin, they considered it armor, because they didn't have the ability to shape metal or the things that we, the thermoplastics and things like that. So that leather vamp brace is great for initial contact. If someone's going for your firearm or a knife, if you have it, and they grab onto that, they can squeeze pretty hard, and you can still move your arm around enough to either get your hand on the weapon and protect it while you go for a secondary weapon to get them off of you. It provides you a level of protection. So leather armor is I would call that, the first step. Cloth armor would be kind of in that same category, because even just wrapping your arm with cloth in some instances can protect you from slashing. Now stabbing, that's a little bit different of an animal. Adding some form of metal or preferably steel, but even some of the tests that I've done with, I can't remember the grade, it's basically siding aluminum. It's like a 16th to an eighth inch thick, and the point of a drop point blade wouldn't go into it. Now, if you have purpose-built blades, like some of the James Williams knives and things like that, those are designed to puncture and pierce a little better. Those actually did pretty well in going through aluminum. They were defeated by steel just because of the nature of their design. But it again, if the leather is comfortable, and some people, like I've had surgery on my left arm, so I can't really wear anything heavy duty on that arm. It's too, I had a tendon release, so it's uncomfortable on the thumb tendon. So I have to design something with more padding for me, which is again where I come up with stuff for y'all too. If it's comfortable for me, I'm pretty sure it's gonna be comfortable for you guys. But as far as like looking within or without the faith, leather is a good choice for very low threat environments. I've actually flown to California with my metal cuff on, and they didn't even bat an eye at it. They just made me take it off and put it in the thing. So I mean, the metal cuffs are really great. I went to court with that. I had my impact necklace on. I had my armor cuff on, and then I had a bracelet on my right hand that was I designed it to where you can take it off quickly and use it as an impact tool. So I had all of that stuff on, and I was able to go in court with it. And so I felt like I was honoring the tenants as well as I wasn't as protected as if I had full suit and my firearm and all that kind of stuff, but I at least had something. And a lot of times you can get by with the bare minimum, but if you can step up to something that has some steel on it, that's a little bit more ideal. I call it ablative armor. Because anything that you can wear on your arms, your shins, your thighs, that can stop shrapnel, can stop you from getting taken out of the fight. So something, even leather that's been oil hardened, I think Big Bear has been or will be doing some tests on how to harden. I think they called it Quillian. Can't remember the proper name. It's been a while. I think they call it Quillian armor, where it's basically boiled in like fats of some kind and then hardens the leather, and that actually can stop a small dagger and stuff like that. But as far as constituting armor, definitely something metal would be good. There's some really good cut and slash proof sleeves that you can find for like the butchering industry.
I was actually just about to ask you that, the Kevlar sleeves.
Yeah, I've actually, it's been very difficult right now with my medical stuff as well as I'm not getting as, I understand everybody is feeling the impact of the financial hardships just like I am, so I'm not really getting a lot of business right now, so I don't have the discretionary funds to experiment. I really wanted to get some of those so I could, because the armor that I'm kind of leaning towards now is going to be a little bit more lightweight, and I'm thinking I can base it off one of those because in the Coast Guard I used to do search and rescue was my primary mission, but a lot of times I would also get folded into law enforcement, and they would issue us gloves, search gloves that were needle proof and cut proofs because believe it or not, drugs are a big problem on the high seas too. You get the fishermen that are up all day, smoking meth and shooting up heroin to go to sleep, and it's the up-down cycle of the drug abuser. And I personally felt it was paramount that I didn't get stuck by a needle for many reasons. So I was super happy to have those, and I wish I still had the pair that I had my last duty station. But those were really awesome because you could literally take a knife, hold it in your bare hands, and pull it across the fist, and it would mark up the gloves, but it wouldn't cut through them. So I definitely think those cut and slash proof sleeves would be ideal for cutting and slashing. Obviously, they're not nowhere near anything you need for any kind of impact or crushing, so it's not something you're going to be able to absorb blows from blocking. Let's say someone swinging a baseball bat at you, it's going to break your forearm. But if you cover, like my idea is to cover that with some of the new metal van braces that I'm thinking of, and have that as a base, because that essentially takes the place of the flight suit. Because from my understanding of the Mandalorian armor system, the flight suit isn't just cool looking; it's there to provide environmental. Excuse me, I'm gonna it caught me right after breakfast.
All
It's there to
good.
provide environmental protection. It turns into a vac suit for hazardous conditions, and obviously, we don't have to fly in a spaceship and go to all kinds of different planets, different environments. But anything that you can use to protect yourself from knives is a good thing, because despite what the media says, most crimes are committed with knives. It's a very scary thought for most people to get cut or stabbed, because you're in the kitchen, you cut your finger, ah man, that fucking hurts. Well, then you multiply that by you're getting your lung and your heart pierced with a blade. Your chances of surviving that are not as good if you don't have medical attention close by. Just like a gunshot, you need to have medical attention close by or be able to provide that first line yourself. So pulling, and I think I've discussed this before on Facebook. When you pull a knife on somebody, that's a mind fuck. You literally are putting in their mind the fear of imminent death, because people are just like they're afraid of snakes and spiders. There's not many people that aren't afraid of a knife. I mean, I personally, if I see someone pulling a knife on me, I'm the fear quickly turns into anger, which I then use to motivate my next actions. But it's all from a level of calm. I know that I'm angry, but I'm controlling it, and now I know what this person has showed me their clear intent. Now I know what I need to do. A lot of people in there, they see a weapon being pulled, they want to instantly go for the weapon. You need to defeat the person, not the weapon, and armor helps do that. If I have an armor, a heavy piece of metal, or even just a piece of metal, it doesn't have to be heavy, on my forearm, that allows me to absorb impact. It allows me to defeat slashing and stabbing, but it also allows me to give a counter blow that has a little bit more behind it than just my forearm. A lot of times, um, elbows are thrown because it's a hard part of your body. I generally try not to throw punches because my hands are my business, so I don't want to break a hand, but I use them for grappling and things like that. But having that armored cuff just gives you a little bit of protection for that really vital joint. Any place your body bends, or the crooks of your body, those are places that are blood flows and arteries and your nerves and your tendons. And if that gets cut, well, then you can't use that arm. So you weighing all that stuff, having a nice cut sleeve on there would definitely be something I would recommend if you can afford it. They're not super expensive, but I always caution people to buy the most expensive they can afford. The buy once, cry once thing, because you never know what you're going to get if you're buying a. You got two choices between one that's $50 and one that's $20 or $19 or whatever, 19.99. The 19.99 may be the exact same one as the $50 one, but are you willing to risk your life on that? So have a budget and try to top out as best you can on the things. Get as best amount of and highest quality as you can. We have those cut sleeves. I can't wait to get a hold of one of them and play around with them. I think those would be a good addition. I mean, it's going to be sucky in hotter climates, but if you can find ones that are a little bit smaller, because you really only need your forearm, you don't want that to get cut. You don't want to get cut at all, but the forearm has a lot of muscle in it that can kind of take some abuse, but it's down towards your hand where there's not much protecting your tendons and your arteries and stuff like that. So that's generally where I try to focus when it comes to armoring your wrist and whatnot, is your lower wrist. So it doesn't need to be a full sleeve bodysuit type situation, because you're going to heat up rather quickly, at least in my environment. Um, but yeah, definitely something that protects from cutting in this day and age is a good idea. Adding a little metal on top of it doesn't hurt, and that's hopefully where I get to come in, or someone that has quality kit. But yeah, I would definitely suggest that. I mean, I've looked into some of that motorcycle armor stuff for impact resistance, and it's super cool for that, but it's not going to provide any kind of cut or stab. It's merely impact resistance. So I'm still kind of playing around with that stuff. Is there any? And that's the thing. I would definitely like to field some more questions, because, like I said, I could talk forever on armor and implementing it into your kit and all that kind of stuff. But if anyone has questions, I might target it a little bit better to what you guys are interested in.
So the other something else I've been thinking of is putting basically putting like a hidden blade on my van brace somewhere, probably inside of it, so it's covert more than it would be overt.
Yeah.
With that combination of the Kevlar sleeve to kind of help hold it in place, because the problem I'm having with the leather van brace right now is it likes to slide down when my arm is just swinging away walking, where I'll be
Yeah,
continually having to
definitely
pull it
something
up.
underneath. I mean, I mean, a good fix to that would be if you just wanted to keep it from moving, would like a sweat guard, a sweatband, like you see tennis players wear and football players wear. That would provide a little bit more girth to your wrist because what happens is your arm is not perfectly straight. It's not a
Yeah,
perfect cone all the way back, and when you move it, it changes shape. So that's a part of what the padding does. It doesn't just protect you from or cushion blows from impacts. It allows the armor to be snug onto that padding, and that padding provides a little bit of leeway because you don't ever want to have your armor so tight that when you move your arm, it's fighting with that harder piece of metal or Kevlar or
yeah,
anything like that. Because what that'll over time, it will literally wear out your tendons because it'll force them to stretch in ways they're not meant to, and that's kind of what I was. I mean, I predominantly I'm right-handed individual, so I think from a right-handed perspective. So I create my armor for the right hand first. Even though my left hand is the one I would usually, the left arm would be the one I wear it on. I always, for some reason, start with right-handed stuff. So that's part of what developed that tendonitis is because I was wearing stuff and seeing how it moved with my body, and it it's not just a cautionary tale, because you don't want to get tendonitis. It sucks. It definitely takes you out of the game for a little bit. Um, but if it's on you and it's doing that and you take an impact, that impact is going to be a lot more detrimental if it's tighter fitting armor and there's no padding. So I would definitely look into. I mean, if you can afford getting one of those cut sleeves, that would accomplish the same thing. I would avoid the ones that I try to avoid adding any kind of extra padding to my palm because I primarily my self defense tools are knives or firearms, and so when you add a lot of extra thickness into your palm area, your grip, it changes how you interface with those tools. So I would avoid any of the ones that come up. Look for the sleeves and not the little glove, half glove looking thing. um, Wearing gloves is fine if they're tight fitting and they don't add a lot of bulk, but you have to take that into mind, and that's something that once you get it, don't just wear it around and think you're going to be protected. Try it out, put it included into your training regimen, whether it's weightlifting, going into the range, practicing, dead gun drills, or if you have a training weapon, awesome, even better. Practicing those things with that on, and if you're going to do it to where you add a little bit more girth to your hand, you need to practice your grip because it changes your grip. When your grip will change your point of impact and point of aim, not your point of aim, but your point of impact, because your body gets used to having things a certain way. That muscle memory is super important. So anything you do that's going to alter that, you need to train with it. So I would stay away from things that add bulk to your hand, but they do make sleeves that go from your wrist to your elbow, um, for butchering, for um, I would even imagine some like in the working in the seafood industry because I've seen some of those dudes doing some crazy stuff with a giant 200-pound tunas and whatnot, and one slip of the knife and there goes your arm. So I mean, anything you can see that's protecting someone from a knife in an industrial standpoint would definitely count and work towards being some kind of cut slash proof armor. Um, Adding metal to that, obviously, even better. But adding things in small increments is just fine if that's how you have to do it, because at least you're upgrading your body. Your skin is very weak. It takes a pound of pressure to puncture your skin, roughly, give or take. Um, Unless you're, a Marine, your neck might be a little more dense, so to speak. Uh, and yes, I make fun of the Marines because even though I was in the Coast Guard,
Oh, you were
we
a
got to
puddle
hang out.
jumper.
Yeah, we got to hang out with the Marines quite a bit during that after 9/11, and we would shuttle them back and forth. They can swim pretty good and whatnot, but they have a hard time steering stuff. It seems.
Hey,
So we
fun
would.
fact for you. During the, well, I think World War II, there was one Coast Guard cutter that got a Medal of Honor
His name was
because,
Douglas Barrow, and he
yeah, so
was
you
he
know who
was
I'm talking about
ferrying
because
Marines back and forth. Yeah,
they,
part of our history.
yeah, so he went back and pulled out a chesty puller.
Yeah, he was shot multiple times, and his boat was riddled with holes, and he didn't give up. Yeah, he was definitely an inspiration when I was going through boot camp, because if he could do that, I could sit there and I could deal with doing sit-ups and push-ups with a 75-pound sea bag, or sea bag filled with sand in the surf. I mean, we got the shit kicked out of us. They say, I'm doing the finger quotes. They say Coast Guard boot camp is one of the toughest, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. I love that shit. But
I was Army.
people did
I
wash out.
loved it. I'm not going to say it was easy because it wasn't, but I
Oh
loved
yeah,
my basic training too.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That's the mindset. If you can get into that, they say embrace the suck. If you can get into that mindset where you're not, because that, I mean, I see it all the time when I'm out and about. People bitching about standing in line, or at the gas pump. Oh man, it's $1. But yeah, it might cost a little bit more, but you need the gas to get to point A, point B to do the shit you need to do.
Yeah.
Bitching about it doesn't do anything. You know, People ask me how I'm doing. Oh, I'm doing great. Oh, you never seem to complain about anything. Well, what the fuck does complaining do? It doesn't do anything. It's just a waste of energy. Yes, things may suck, but if you can mentally embrace it and understand that it is just temporary, because everything's temporary. We all gotta die sometime. But the way you live and how you choose to think about it is gonna set the tone for that period that we're on this planet. And if you can deal with it with a good attitude, um, and not let it get you down, that's what I want on my team. If I have to go into a situation where my life or their life is on the line, I want somebody that after we survive it can joke about it. Because if you can't, it's gonna break you. And I fully believe PTSD is a thing, and that it is detrimental to the human psyche. I pulled bodies out of the water. I still have nightmares of little boys and girls that I couldn't save. It's always the ones you can't save that bother you the most. Um, so I mean, it's something that I deal with. It is part of the sacrifice that I was willing to give. We semper paratus, ever ready is our motto, but there's so others may live is our unwritten motto. We do our job, just like the Mandalorians are keepers of the way. They're out there being protectors so that other people. We're not doing it for ourselves. We're doing it for other people. And when you have that mindset, that sacrificial mindset, not that you're wasting your life, that you're sacrificing your life, but you're sacrificing your time to train. You're sacrificing your comfort to deal with the pain and the discomfort that will come from being hurt in the line of duty, so to speak. When you have that mindset of everything is just fleeting and I can deal with this because it can get worse, it may not get worse, but if you have that good mindset of, I'm not going to let it get me down, and you truly practice those principles, then life doesn't become easy. There is no easy. Life is made up of various moments. Some suck, some don't. Um, but that's goes back to the armoring, the faith. Having that faith in something greater than yourself gives you the ability to deal with those things. And having the physical armor on your body gives you the ability to physically deal with those things. And so that's a big part of my mission is I want to give those people that have stepped up and say, I believe the 12 tenets are the way I want to live my life, whether you completely 100% agree with me or not, I'm going to give you the tools to live those tenets. I'm going to give you the ability to survive that hope to God you don't have to deal with that shit. But if it does come to your door, I want to give you the tools, or at least point you in the direction of the tools that can help you survive that and make it a lot easier. Because I'm all for cosplay. I think cosplay is awesome. It's a great way to outreach communities. It's a great way to do charity. It's a lot more. No hospital is going to say, "Hey, Mr. Kincaid, would you mind coming to a Make a Wish day dressed in your Mandalorian garb?" And I show up in full battle dress with plate carrier and M16. They're not going to want to see that. That
No,
is
they
not
want the
what.
more Disney friendly variety Mandalorian.
Yeah, which is total. I mean, you can be both. I'm all for having hobbies that don't. Do I think cosplay provides a useful function as far as what I'm interested in life? Not so much. So that's why I don't do it. But I have other outlets. I don't I
It's
don't go
also
dress up
expensive.
in Mandalorian armor as an outlet for having fun and stuff like that. For me, fun is going in the shop and hammering out some steel and making stuff. But if that's what is fun for you, I'm not judging you. I think that's fucking awesome. Do it. But if you can do it for a purpose and make it benefit someone else, that's the true core tenet to me of being a Mandalorian is doing things for others, being able to provide things for others, whether it's a shining example, which I'm not a shining example at all. I cuss, I don't drink, I don't smoke, but I'm definitely not always someone you should emulate. But I personally feel that my purpose on this planet is to help other people. And if you want to do it by going to Make a Wish and making a kid that is probably not going to live to see their next birthday happy for that one moment, I would support you every day till the rest of you, till I'm dead. I think that is fucking awesome because the kids are our future, and if we can give them a little bit of the knowledge that we had to fight to get, for not so much for free, but without the fight, then that armors them for when they have to go. Their spirit is armored for when they have to go and fight. I saw a really good post earlier today on Facebook. I think Josh Lazar shared it about teaching kids to handle firearms. Yes, it was definitely staged. Obviously, you're not going to leave a even a live or unlive weapon in the living room with a magazine right there, but it illustrated a good point that if dad's not home or heaven forbid he sleeps through hurricanes, that if stuff does happen, you want your son or daughter to be able to deal with it, to be able to go forth and dispense the fuck you, I like to call it a get off my property kind of a situation. Um, and it's the same thing with army. If you're going to teach someone how to be offensive, you also need to teach them to be defensive because a big part of any kind of situation is being able to have the tools, know how to use the tools, and that's the tactics. That strategy is a big thing. Is thinking, constantly thinking. That's going to armor you in a way too. And it's not obviously traditional armor in the sense that we're talking about today, but all these things come back. The armor is just the physical. If you don't have all the other stuff, it's not going to do what it needs to do. Um, but yeah, I think definitely imparting on our youth that life is not what you see on TV, and there's not always a happy ending, and the bad guy is not always going to look the part. There's going to be bad guys that you're not going to be able to tell are bad guys until they strike. So I mean, being able to teach your children and other people, your spouse, people that haven't seen, I don't know how many of us in this chat have been in the military, but
All three
whether
of
you've
us.
been in combat or not, just even going through boot camp, you learn about your physical capabilities, and that's a big thing. Knowing what you're capable of is um, extremely important. Whether you're carrying a firearm or wearing armor or anything, or just walking down the street, with nothing but the keys in your pocket and your vape pen or whatever the heck you got. Being able to be confident physically in your own physicality um, is a precursor to those that will look for victims. If you're walking along with your shoulders slouched, people are going to target you. Criminals will target you a lot more than if you're walking, shoulders back, chest out, chin down, and just taking confident strides and keeping your head on a swivel. No one's going to want to mess with you, whether you have weapons, overt or covert or not. It's the presence that you bring into a situation. There's a book Let me see if I can find it. There's a book called Scaling Force. And I know we're getting a little off topic with armor, but it's all kind of comes back to the armor.
It's alright.
Scaling Force, the dynamic decision making under threat of violence. This is a book that I've read countless times. I probably have bought 4 or 5 different copies because I'll give them out to people that I meet. I was flying across country and I had one on me and I had already read it, and there was a gentleman going to basic training. And he talked to me for a little bit, and I could tell that he was not from any sort of background, that he was prepared for what he was going into. So I gave him that book, and I wrote my address on it and said, man, when you get through basic training and you get a chance to read this book, let me know what you thought. And I got a postcard from, I can't remember, he was in Hawaii or something doing, he ended up going in the Navy. And
that lucky bastard.
all it said, yeah, I know, station vacation would have been awesome. And all the postcard said was thank you. The book was awesome, and that's all I needed to hear. That he read it, he took it, and he understood it, and that right there, that gave him some tools that he didn't have previously. Because thinking is our greatest tool. Being able to write is a awesome tool. Understanding the written word, and it may not seem as if it matters to arms and armor, but it does, because if you can't understand the directions for setting up your TV, you're not going to set it up right. And if you can't understand the proper way to take care of a firearm or take care of your armor, eventually it's going to become a detriment instead of a useful tool for what you're doing. So I mean, it all plays in. I mean, there's a gentleman I watch on YouTube, Warrior Poet, and he illustrates it greatly. Your mind and your body and all these things, they're in concert. You can't have one without the other. I could wear a full suit of Beskar armor if it was a thing, and if I didn't understand how to fire a rocket, would it really be benefiting me to have these cool weapons and this cool armor? To a certain extent, yeah, I'd be a little bit more impervious to damage, but at some point, not knowing how to take full advantage of either a situation or your tools will get in the way. Let me see. Let me look at my notes and see if there's anything else I want to talk about real quick.
While you're doing that, I've been screwing around with these cut level 1 gloves that I get supplied to me from work. And I'm just kind of fucking around with a sheath fixed blade knife. Just pretending to go through situations where I'd have to hold it. And I could feel it, but it's not doing shit to me.
Yeah, feeling the blade in your hand is one thing. That's it actually feeling it go into your hand would be the part I would be.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm not feeling.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I would love to.
And for only cut level 1, that's pretty good.
Now I don't. Is it kind of like pistol and rifle armor as far as cut level? It's like certain. What does the cut level 1 mean? Help me understand that.
Cut level 1 is the lowest cut level for like box cutters, small blades.
Okay. And how many levels? I'm gonna write this down. How many
that I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into that. But I'll also have to look at work. I work for Milwaukee, so these are Milwaukee brand cut level. You can get them from like Home Depot, anywhere that sells Milwaukee. You can get these.
Yeah, my buddy builds cabinets and stuff, and everything he has is Milwaukee.
Yeah, he's gonna be jealous of me. I get 50% off Milwaukee products,
which is awesome.
Yes, because this shit is expensive.
Yeah, it is expensive. I mean, he does high end. Like I think the last job I helped him on was right around 80 or 90 grand just for a bathroom and a closet. So he doesn't need the discount so much. I'm sure he would take it, but I got him into before I started working with him. We were friends before I started working with him, but when I started working with him, he would constantly make fun of me about having a knife on my hip and 2 in my pocket. But then he would constantly ask to borrow a knife for a certain project or a task or whatever, and I'd be like, no, get your own. Of course, I'd let him use it, but then that was directly after telling him no. And he's actually starting to get into. He bought a CNC machine. He's a gentleman that'll be making hopefully another 2 or 3 months, he'll be up and running to make holsters, and he'll be able to print our sigil on the holster. So that's the
Oh,
project
nice.
I'm working with him on. Is to get,
I've actually got a guy at a gun and pawn shop south of me, probably about 15, 20 minutes away. They've got a laser engraver. I don't know if you saw my posts in the Art Barajur channel when I was building my rifle. 'Cause I know you're not active on the Discord very much, but and that's
I
fine.
check in on it. It's just difficult with a lot of times I'm either trying to work or my wife and I both work from home, but when my son's home, I'm the primary
Yeah,
point of contact for him. So I try not to be on my phone as much as possible. My wife points it out to me when I am, and I do appreciate it, but I'm trying to be more mindful of that as well. I'm getting more and more into it. I'm starting to want to lean away from Facebook, but I don't want to abandon it completely. I actually created, I don't know if it's even visible, but I created a Armorers Guild thing on the Discord, little chat room, whatever, so I can start to migrate things over to that a little bit more.
yeah,
It's just I'm 3 years away from 50 years old, and that whole flashing 12 on your VCR syndrome is starting to catch up with me. It just seems like it's too much because there's a lot of other things I want to focus on. As far as I try to read a little bit here and there as much as I can as far as armor making and stuff. My wife bought me a really awesome book on patina, so I'm starting to get ways of, instead of just spray paint, ways of coloring and coating the metal to protect it, because rust is the enemy when it comes to steel and other ferrous metals. Um, so I'm trying to learn more about not just the armor and how to shape it, but how to protect it and coat it, because we all want to look cool, right? We all want to, if not look cool, at least personalize things to our certain taste, which is totally understandable. Um, I'm not going to wear armor that I don't think looks cool unless I really absolutely need it. I'm going to put a sticker on it or something at least. But yeah, that I'm not sure if I saw the post you're talking about, but that is a big, obviously off the topic of armor, but on the topic of Armorers Guild and having people inside the faith. That is one of my driving motivations, is to find more metal workers, find more leather workers, to build up a community, almost like having an Etsy for Mandalorians kind of a thing,
pretty much.
to where we can shop inside of the faith and support, because that's a big thing. That's a big part of community, supporting others. So I mean, building community and building that support network to where you can go to me for certain things, and if I can't do it, I can point you in the direction of somebody that can. That's important.
Yeah, and hopefully I'll get my 3D printer working the way I want it to. I think I may have to upgrade the nozzles a little bit, but still getting a little under extrusion on that. So I gotta fix that before I can send something to you so I can get admitted to the guild. But what I
3D stuff, that's like great to me. We do have a really good group of 3D guys that when the time comes, I'll have you send it to them to review it.
Yeah. Where I was going with that post though, the when I got my lower receiver shipped to them so I could do my background check, he saw the sigil on my van brace and he's like, "Hey, you want me to engrave that in your lower?" I was like, "Hell yeah!" So I've got the sigil of the faith engraved on my lower receiver, and there was nothing where the fun button selector was. So he offered to engrave "This is the way" where full auto would be. And me being me for the language, I had him put it in Mando'a. So it goes from being safe to semi to Ibik Runi.
Nice. Yeah, I'm looking into. Once I get a definitive alphabet and the money saved up, I've got the people that I ordered the sigil stamps that I use, the big and the small, um, have agreed that as long as I have good images that will work for them, they can make me metal stamps of the alphabet, so that I can then stamp things. Because I mean, it would be neat, even though I don't have a lot of time to dedicate to learning a new language. I fully support people learning to do it and all that kind of stuff, and I would also like to be able to offer that as customization, and again, it comes back to marking something for, I use the sigil not just to mark it as a consecrated item of the faith, but also it's an identifier. There's not many people out there. I mean, I could go count the receipts. There's probably 150 receipts. I've had a lot of support in what I do, and I appreciate every bit of it. And I try not to waste any of the donations that I've been given or any of the money. I'm using it for research and development a lot of the times. I pay first and foremost. I pay my shop is in my garage. Thankfully, it's a really short commute, so I do pay the bills, so to speak. 50% of everything that not donation, but 50% of every product that I sell goes towards paying for the electricity I use. And I have a sink out there, which is awesome. I don't have to use the inside sink anymore and piss my wife off, or the hose outside. So I mean, obviously, as a hobbyist business, because that's what I am, according to taxes, the tax records. Um, I have to, cover those things, but then the rest of it goes towards buying materials and tools that will make my job easier, because I don't plan on stopping doing this anytime soon. And anything I can get to make my life easier in the shop means I can produce more and higher quality things, because right now most everything is made by hand, and there's a level of obviously craftsmanship that goes into that. There's a level of inconsistency when you're doing things by hand and measuring things by eye. If you look at old armor, it isn't. A lot of people expect everything to be perfect and shiny, and that's not how armor was made back then. A lot of them, they call it the militia armor. The soldier armor was literally just hammered out, and it wasn't buffed and polished, and you got a coat of beeswax on it, and you were out the door. You didn't shine on the battlefield, so to speak. And that misconception and our modern society of everything is machine made and so precise, people really a lot of people. Sorry, I was talking about having time to say, honey. Call me if you need anything. Um, a lot of people have this misconception that even handmade stuff is going to be 100%. It's going to look like machine made, and it just doesn't. There's no, even the best of us. I mean, I'm by no means, the best blacksmith or the best this or that. Um, but even the ones that I look up to, there's always a level of inconsistency to a certain degree. And as time goes on, that craftsmanship and that level of attention to detail, pays off to where you can get very close. But um, I very much have a blacksmith mindset when I approach a lot of the things that I do. That it doesn't have to look pretty; it just has to function.
Yeah, and
And
that's ultimately what we want in our armor. We want
yeah,
functionality over prettiness.
yeah. And I do my best. I mean, I use spray paint because I'm trying to use, and you'll notice my designs are pretty simple. They're not meant to mimic the Mandalorian armor you see on TV in any stretch, other than it's modular. I love it when people send me pictures of the repairs they've made or the repainting they've done, because I purposely used spray paint on the armored cuffs, because it's still armor. It's the smallest form of armor that I would personally feel comfortable wearing, because I do want to protect my wrists. But it is a very meditative thing. Like when I used to shoot USPA, I would practice for 2 hours, and then I would go shoot black powder for like an hour and a half, because I was still doing something I loved. I was still shooting, but it also gave me that. It was kind of like stretching before and after exercise. It gave my mind and my body that kind of time to decompress and kind of just, okay, I'm not competing. I'm not doing this. This is purely for fun. But it took 15 minutes to load my 1858 Remington and then shoot it. It took like 3 seconds if I wanted to shoot it, but it was a time-intensive process. It, did two things. It calmed me down and slowed me down, and number two is it made me super grateful. I don't have to rely on black powder to provide safety for me and my family. But if I did, at least I had some form of understanding of
Yeah.
how to do that. Like same, armor. I mean, you can be in a situation where you may not have your armor, but if you understand, you can wrap. You could literally duct tape a towel to your arm, and that would suffice in certain situations, and it would still be for that moment, would still count as armor for that moment. If that's shit hit the fan, that's all you had. Um, but it's that knowledge, like I can use a handkerchief and a pen and use it as a tourniquet because I have the knowledge of how to do that. I did a little bit of EMT stuff in the Coast Guard, and so having that knowledge means I can use other things around me, and having that knowledge about armor and what you need to protect. If you're going up to someone with a knife, they're gonna slash and try to stab you. That is like really the only two things you're gonna do with a knife unless you're trying to pry open something. But as far as attackers go, they're going to slash or stab, and a lot of times they're going to go for your upper body, and they might, if they're smart, they'll go for the around your groin and stuff because you can get someone to bleed pretty bad doing that. But as a defensive mindset, you don't ever want to try to deflect a knife with your hands because you need your hands. So you're going to do it with your forearm and stuff. So even without armor on, you have the bones there help provide some form of protection because a lot of times you see defensive wounds on the forearms because of that particular people are going to throw up hands. They're going to try to protect their face and protect their upper body. So if you can add something extra to that, ideally some leather and steel, but if you don't have it and you happen to have duct tape or a beach towel or even just a beach towel you can wrap around your arm and hold it in your hand and make sure you have something, it's better than nothing, right? So I mean, when we understand what armor is useful for, we can take that knowledge and apply it to a situation we don't have the ideal. Because you're not always going to have your ideal toolkit on you. You're not always gonna, if I'm at the beach in my shorts and my t-shirt, I'm not gonna be carrying my big handgun. If a handgun at all, I might have a knife on me.
Yeah.
But if a gunfight does ensue, I one of the things that we are trained in the Coast Guard is how to disarm people. And if I'm disarming you, that means I'm taking your gun. So then it's my gun. So I mean, having that training and having that mindset, I mean, I've used it in real life. I'm not going to get into that, but I have gone into situations without firearms and people pull firearms, and I've taken those firearms away from them because I'm familiar with what that gun can do. If it's a single action, double action, a semi-automatic, I understand what I need to do to defeat that. Now, I've been lucky and I've succeeded. I may not the next time. Who knows? I'm getting older and slower. I'm of a mindset I'm going to shoot first and ask for forgiveness later because I can't roll around on the ground anymore. I can't get hit in the head. If I get hit in the head, I'm going blind because I've had cataracts and I don't have the ability to focus at distance anymore. But having the knowledge, I think, of armor and weapon use is vastly important. Having the armor and the weapons itself are obviously going to be ideal, but having that knowledge that armors you or prepares you for less than ideal situations. So like those cut-proof sleeves, if you have that on, that's awesome. But let's say you don't, knowing that you need to protect that area and figuring out ways to do it that's pretty important too, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I'm also looking up on Amazon now because I was kind of curious. They've got cut level 5. So that's gonna be the highest that I've seen so far.
What's that for, like chainsaws and stuff?
Uh, Maybe not for chainsaws, because your arm's gonna get caught up in the blade and some serious shit's gonna happen. But it's gonna be more protection than, say, a cut level 1, where you're good.
Chaps.
Do what?
Yeah, no, yeah, they do have chainsaw chaps. That's why. I mean, I was kind of being a smartass, but I was kind of also curious because I mean, I've worn chainsaw chaps. I've never actually had an accident, but I know they work. So that was a serious smartass comment rolled into one. But what
Yeah.
does it say? Does it say in the description what they're used for?
That's what I'm looking at now. So the ones I've pulled up are the Avid Rare. I'm not even gonna try to pronounce that name. I'm sorry. One
Yeah.
pair pack cut resistant sleeves for arm work protection safety in EN388 level 5, anti puncture with or without thumb hole. So these are going to
That's
be good cut resistance and puncture resistant.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. What would be really cool is to be able to find a manufacturer that sells that fabric on rolls because I would love to have the ability to have. There's all kinds of new products coming out. People send me stuff all the time, and I'm looking into it. Some things are require specific tooling that I will never be able to afford, and factory environments, nitrogen purge, oxygen purge, and just crazy shit. But then there's things like that that's a fabric that I'm assuming it can be cut by something because they have to cut it to size. But being able to use something like that as a backer for metal armor is, I think, that is definitely something I want to look into. Now, definitely having that under some leather armor would be awesome
Yeah, and
because the
that's what
leather
I would want
armor,
to get it for.
yeah. Because I mean, I always, even when I was making just the leather, the little, I call them initiate cuffs. I know we don't have that kind of um, level of description in what we're doing, but for me, people that were interested in the faith but weren't ready to jump full in, because the metal armored cuffs, I sell those for $95 because there's a lot of time and effort and material. I mean, the screws alone, I'm getting 25 for, I think, like 15, $16 before. I haven't checked, but I'm guessing because I've stocked up quite a bit. But I'm imagining inflation has affected that. So I charge a fair price in my mind because if I was selling when I did sell at Renaissance fairs, something like that, I would have charged $120 for because it's the market, right? What will the market tolerate? And I'm always trying to look for ways to, because right now I only now I make and sell hooks to people. I have established customers that they can't, for whatever reason, can't get enough of hooks, and I'm okay with that. It's something I can, in between doing, in between heats of doing something a little bit bigger, I can throw a couple little metal hooks in and shape them real quick. It keeps me busy, it keeps me limber, but it also adds a little bit of income to the things that I'm doing. But primarily and my wife, she supports me 100%. Um, she is totally understands why, but I primarily focus on the faith right now. There's other than two customers that I make hooks for 2 times a year. I'm not looking outside the faith to do anything else at this point. I might do some sculptures down the road just to put in a art gallery locally, but other than that, my main goal is building or buying the tools I need to provide armor for y'all. Um, I don't really have a whole lot of time outside of that to do much else, and I don't really want to. Since I've started doing this, my bookshelf had a lot of sculpture books and stuff like that, and other types of blacksmithing books, and those are now in the closet in a box. And the armor books and the weapon books have taken over um, the spot because that's my focus. Being able to research, before I go to bed, I pull out one of these books and I'll try to give it at least 5 to 10 minutes before I go to bed of at least thumbing through the book and getting ideas. And I have a journal or a sketchbook journal right next to the bed that I can write. Now, 2 nights ago, I woke up in the middle of the night and I had an idea and I wrote it down. And that's eventually going to translate into hopefully a useful piece of kit for the keepers of the way because I'm on the board. I don't know why. I'm guessing because of my armoring and whatnot. I mean, um, I try not to espouse a lot of my personal beliefs. They don't go against the way. It's just nothing has, other than the 12, nothing's really been set in stone. And hopefully we'll work on that and create something a little bit more of to give people the opportunity to discuss it more because we don't want to challenge the 12, but there are people in the world that haven't gone through boot camp, have never had their life threatened, who who can look at those and not fully understand them. And I get it. When I was young, before I joined the military, when I was a wee lad, Um, I looked at the world through naive eyes, and I wouldn't have understood the 12 like I do now, or like I would have even after getting out of the Coast Guard. Um, so I'm definitely, because I feel a lot of, it's slowed down significantly, but for a while there, after the TikTok got blew up and we started getting more members, I was answering 20, 30 chat heads a day, and sometimes having, I still have a few of those people I still have running conversations with, because I don't delete any of the conversations. I keep them as a record, either because I'm making something for them or because I want to check back in on some of them. Because there are people who have come to me with, I wouldn't say uh, questions of faith, but telling me their story. They just, it's like being a bartender, I guess. They want to open up to you, and I'm totally down for that. I get it, and I'm willing to have those conversations with people, because um, somebody has to, right? You can't just
Yeah.
create something and leave them to the wind. And eventually, once all the legal recognition is done and we have clergy, then they'll take over that aspect of it. Um, but it's the community. That's, I love doing this, because I have not met, I've butted heads with people, but I have no problem with that. I don't take it personally. I actually find it quite enjoyable to have heated discourse, because it's kind of like steel. Until it's heated up, I can't do anything with it. I can't shape it. I can file away at it, all I want, and it's adding heat to something. The steel makes it intimate, makes it super easy to shape, right? So when I have those heated conversations, I love it. I'm all in it. I'm all aboard when those pop up, because I'm not trying to change someone else's mind. I'm trying to hear what they have to say, while obviously being heard, but take that information I'm being given and challenge my own worldviews, my own thoughts, the things that I think and the things that I do. Because if you're not learning, then you might as well be dead, because improved self improvement, which I feel is part of the core tenet of what we do, self improvement and making yourself better, just it benefits everybody. We've gotten away from that in our society. Just like we've gotten away from wearing armor and carrying weapons. When an armed society is a polite society, and part of that is wearing armor to protect yourself from those that are not as polite. But we've gotten away from that in our society, and it's first world problems I hear bandied about a lot, but I think that is a true first world problem, because it all would take is a lights out event, turn off the power for 30 days and millions of people will die. If there's no way for them to get refrigerated food, we're in a at will, or I think it's called at will economy, where you've got
The
maybe
highest,
1 to 2 days. Go ahead.
the highest estimate I've seen, if we lose electricity for 90 days, we'll lose 90% of the population.
Yeah.
That's the
I mean,
highest estimate I've seen. I've
yeah.
seen it
I
as
mean,
low as 50.
yeah, we can go from first world to third world like that. It doesn't take much. I mean, we a lot of society buys into the veil of society. They think that is how everything will be. Just like we take our modern principles and we look back on history and we go, oh, they were evil. It's like, no, they were living in the times that they lived in, when 1,000 years in the future, when there is no third world or whatever, Star Trek, whatever the heck comes about, hopefully Star Wars, but they'll look back on us and go, oh, those savages. So I mean, you can't look at history and judge it with you have to accept it for what it is and learn the lessons from that. Those
Nine
who do not,
meals.
yeah, exactly. Those who do
We're only
not,
9 meals away from chaos.
yeah. And that's a big part of, well, I'm super thankful that I grew up in the woods, and I had Native American teachers, and I know how to trap, hunt, fish, all of that stuff I can do passively, where I can be doing other things. um, set snares, and you can snare fish, you can snare deer. You do a deadfall trap for deer, and they can't run off, and you come back and the meat's still fresh because it does not kill them. Just like fishing snares, you have you can do a spring pole, or you can have a fish trap in the water. You know,
Yeah.
those are all important things, as far as not just Mandalorians, but Mandalorians need to be self-sufficient, because there's not a lot of us. It's awesome that we have a group and there's a lot of people on Facebook, um, but we don't know how many of those truly are living the path. And when we are completely recognized, how many will follow us down that path. But it doesn't matter. Is if we're self-sufficient and we can survive those 90 days and get past those 9 meals, we can then meet up and maybe we'll be the ones that reform society when it crumbles. Who knows? But all of that is important. Knowing how to knowing what to wear, armor, and what to use, weapons, is just one small part of you know the whole shebang, so to speak. Being able to feed yourself, clean yourself, clothe yourself, those are all super important. How to look at nature and see a medicine cabinet and a shopping center. Going out there and finding pine tar to use as glue, and knowing that you can use birch bark for a pseudo form of aspirin for pain relief. Brewing pine nettle tea for diarrhea and stuff like that. Having the ability to use nature and not just survive but thrive. I joke with my friends a lot. I don't plan on surviving anything. I plan on thriving things, because obviously there's going to be an element of survival if you don't have electricity and you don't have central heating and cooling. You're going to have to. It's going to be a survival situation for the rest of your life, but that doesn't mean you can't thrive. If you can set yourself up for success because you have the knowledge, then the tools will come over time. You will build tools. I tell my son, he's starting to get interested in learning how to shoot, and I tell him, go pick up that stick. It looks like a gun, but learn how to use it correctly. Don't point it at me unless you intend to pew pew, and I got you. Keep it pointed at the ground or at the sky, depending on the situation. Don't point it at your friend. It's instilling those rules in him when he does finally pick up a firearm and lets one go down range. He'll be surprised. It'll be loud. It'll be jerky. It'll be something he's not used to, but he at least will have ingrained in his personality and his mindset and his muscles that you don't point it at something you don't
Yeah.
intend to destroy. So, I mean, and that, even though we started this off by talking about armor, it all, if you're not strong enough to wear the armor because you can't hunt, you can't fish, you're just going to be, I think someone made fun of me because I was essentially talking about how people that have all that stuff that don't know how to use it, they're loot drops. You know, I teach,
You've been
when I
talking
was
to
in the Coast
Aru
Guard and I was
again.
teaching. Yeah, it's an upgrade if you don't have that stuff. But even in the Coast Guard, I did small arms training because after 9/11, I wasn't certified to do it, but they pushed me into it because I was a boatswain mate, because we didn't have enough boatswain mates. We had to have more people doing that job because of what happened. And so I got flown around in C-130s and super comfortable, freezing my ass off, toting gear around, just teaching people like yeomans the basics of how to use a firearm, and taking them to the range. All right, here's 2 magazines. At least try to hit the target. All right, you know how the gun works. Let's go. Just getting them out in the field, just to basically. So the first 72 hours after 9/11, I didn't sleep. I was taking caffeine pills and drinking coffee. I don't think I had a lick of water other than what flopped up
Besides
on me
what
from the
was
surf.
in the coffee.
Yeah, that too. Uh, but like I didn't shower. I didn't sleep. There was one point where I had someone else's blood on me because they slipped and fell down a ladder, and I had to provide first aid
Ooh.
because they were nervous. They were scared. They'd never seen the Coast Guard show up with MP5s and HK 45s, and up until then, we didn't have all the super cool stuff. We had to get it in a hurry, and it
Yeah,
was
because Coast Guards are one of our last lines of defense along the coast.
yeah.
It's also
I mean, we were my first unit. I had M9 A1s and A2s that had been looked like they'd been chewed on by the Marines we got them from, and my
They probably
M16
were.
was Vietnam era. Like you could see the damage that these things had, and I thankfully they had replaced some of the furniture and stuff, so it wasn't all dry rotted and stuff. But The first time I got my M16 out of the armory, out of the magazine, I had to clean that motherfucker. It took me like 2 hours, and I cleaned it so good and got all that rust off. There were shiny spots on it because there wasn't any parkerization left. It was all just rust on some of the barrel equipment in the fire control group. Um, and I had a friend that was a gunner's mate. He gave me a new bolt carrier group because the one I had was, his exact words were, looser than a Saigon hooker. That thing was ridiculous, man. I mean, you didn't even, you could hold it because you test it, you flip it over and things are supposed to move a certain way. Well, there was no friction. It was like parts, it had been used so much that their parts weren't even touching the extractor. Wasn't even really touching the side of the bolt face, and so it was bad. It cycled and it functioned, but
You probably had a
it's a
lot of
testament
issues
to the
with it.
design. Thankfully, well, the NATO ammo we're using was higher pressure than the stuff they were using originally with it, so that a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like the recoil, which they don't really recoil. It's more barrel rides, but having that extra higher NATO pressure helped it cycle a lot better, and I kept it wet. I had a little squeezy bottle of oil on me because it would seize up more than anything because of the salt in the environment. Because we're not on, we didn't have to really deal with sand and stuff, but just being out on the ocean, after a day of being on the deck, whether I knew it or not, I was getting covered in salt spray constantly, constantly, constantly. So even in the holster, my Beretta would, on the open top slide, the forward portion of it, if I didn't clean it really well and lube it up, that salt would get stuck in there, and the Berettas jam more than the M16s. Um, but thankfully, I've never had to use my weapons in the line of duty. I just have used them at the range, so I'm fully happy I never had to test them out. But after 9/11, we got all kinds of, I got M4s and new Berettas, and then some of the more, not so much tip of the spear, but they got a lot of higher end stuff that it's like mass purchase orders. Within a week, they had new gear and stuff like that. But yeah, we didn't exactly operate with the highest quality stuff, but it taught me to make do with what I have. And now I have higher end stuff that I've built to my specifications, my barrel lengths and calibers and whatnot. Things that I know I can take apart and put back together with moderate moderate success. I would imagine. I'm not an armorer in that sense. I'm not a gunsmith by any stretch, but um, I've built a couple, maybe 40, 50 ARs for myself and friends over the years, just because I had the tools and people were seeing the world for what it was finally. Because you don't talk to me for very long before I start telling you need to have a gun, you need to have a knife. Why don't you have this? You need to have this. Are you really thinking you're going to be protected in an environment where criminals are going to look at you and see you're unarmed? That's not how life works. Pulling the veil away from myself as well as them has been very important in my life.
Sorry to interrupt here. I need to be getting off of here. I've got some work I've got to be doing, and it's about to get really loud on my side.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, be good, Bob.
Like I said, I have diarrhea in the mouth. I can talk all day. My wife is thankfully kind enough to have taken our son off to go do some stuff. I set aside time to do this, but if we're done, I'm totally good. If anyone has any further questions about armor, I hope I've answered those since that was my primary mission here.
Yeah. I'm thinking with, I think we'll just
You'll
keep going by topics. See you later, Bob. I think we'll do knives and blades for next week. So if you know anybody who is a good, I think Mando'a Arms, I'll try to get in contact with them because I think they're doing a lot of blade smithing.
Yeah,
if I remember
I
right.
had to shy away from that just because it was impacting my health a little bit. I developed gastroparesis, and my body is not as.
Not gonna pretend I know what that is, but it sounds painful.
It's more dietary. My stomach just doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and I don't get the full amount of nutrients from my food anymore. I'm adapting and overcoming. It's just
I got you.
I was planning on making blades there for a while because I've always had knives. I love knives. But yeah, no, someone that's actually up and running, producing, would be a good person to talk to. I mean, obviously I can talk about that for hours too, but I digress.